Hi, and welcome to 3 of Skeins Knitting Crochet podcast, number 90. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Cryss.
Welcome to the party. As you see, we're in a slightly different situation
We're
today.
kind of in the same situation, but we're in different seating.
Yes.
It's the seating from upstairs and then the room that's downstairs.
Yeah. We're doing some rearranging. We have an idea, so we might look different again next week. So we'll see how that goes.
We move furniture in our house a lot, and I don't know why. It's been a thing for many, many years. Like literally, there's times when you go to bed and you wake up and furniture in the living room's in a different position, and it's just now.
And it's okay.
A thing we do for fun.
Sometimes you find a way to make it more functional.
This was substituting as our living room sofa for a while. But we just bought our new sofa, and so this is actually kind of homeless at the moment. So we're trying to give it a home, and that's what's going on.
Yeah.
It always sort of makes sense on the surface.
Yeah. But when you have to explain it to other people, you know,
right?
Like, oh, is that normal?
Okay. What's going on with you?
Well, I have made a start on my skirt. That's what's up.
Okay. Tell us more about that.
Yeah.
I'm starting a skirt, and I'm not telling you about it.
And I'm not going to tell you a thing. So I've never made a skirt. I've never knitted a skirt before.
Really?
Yeah. This is my first knitted skirt. So what I decided to do, just to give myself something to work from, because, you know, I have a pattern that I like, but it wasn't written for me. And it was written a while ago, so the yarn, you know, I'm using everything that's not part of this pattern because I can. So what I did was I draped the skirt on myself. I got Mom to help me because you cannot drape on yourself by yourself. You can't do it. So if you're gonna drape something, ask for a friend to help you or have a custom mannequin that's just like you. So we had some old fabric lying around.
Like upholstery fabric too.
Yeah, it's just whatever.
We're working with what we have.
Whatever. So you can see my draping lines on it. I draped the skirt so that I have the exact dimensions of the skirt I want. I like the way it fits. It's the same shape skirt as the skirt I'm knitting, and I'm not stressing about it being a woven fabric because I'm working in a cotton linen blend, and that's not really an elastic combination, so I don't really have to worry too much about it being stretchy or not. If I was going to use wool, I would probably look for like a T-shirt material, you know, something that's also a stretchy fabric to drape basically a sloper in, or they call it, I think the sewers call them mock-ups now. So I pinned in darts on the front and back. I labeled my back and my front because, you know, they're different. And I was even able to use my mock-up skirt to decide the final length of my knitted skirt.
Is that short?
Oh, it's not that short. It's going to be on me just below the knee. I don't have that long legs. I have long torso. My legs aren't that long.
No, because in the picture, it's almost like an ankle length skirt. It's like mid-calf in the
Yeah, I didn't want it that long.
Okay.
So that was my step one. So now I had something to measure, and I measured myself. Yeah, I measured myself, of course, but I also had a garment to measure to get the dimensions from. So the next thing I did was I made my swatches. So this is swatch 1. This is my stockinette swatch. It has these eyelet details in it, so I included a few of those just in case it had an effect on the fabric. And I love how this feels. It feels really, really good. I also did a garter swatch because a lot of the top of the skirt is in garter stitch. And I know for myself, and I imagine for most people, my gauge in stockinette is completely different than my gauge in garter. And I was right when I measured. My gauge in stockinette was different than my gauge in garter. Look at me with my bookmarks, Cryss.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. So when I did the stockinette swatch, I ended up doing 48 stitches and 29 rows in the round because I'm making the skirt in the round. And I use US 5 3.75 millimeter needles. Now, I was hoping to go with a slightly larger needle, but this was
this is a DK or worsted?
This is a worsted, but the fabric is so nice. I really wanted to go with a bigger needle, but I love how look. I love how the fabric came out, and I was just like, okay, it has to be this. So in stockinette, I got a gauge of 4.682 stitches per inch. In garter, I got a gauge of 4.285 stitches per inch. And you see, by the time I got to the garter swatch, I was over swatching, so I made a little tiny one. I was like, I'm only doing this because I really need to know my gauge. But I did really need to know my gauge because the entire top portion of the skirt, I would say the first 6 or 7 inches of the skirt are in garter stitch. And I'm working increases in here to take it from my waist circumference to my hip circumference. And if I had used my stockinette swatch, it would have been way off.
I thought you were just doing a waistband, but it's actually the top, almost half of the skirt.
Well, not even, but it's a good chunk of the skirt. It is a good chunk. So I am going, once I get to the stockinette portion, I am going to do one more set of increases just to balance out the difference between the garter and the stockinette. So just know going forward, if you have a good portion of your thing that's in one type of stitch and one that's in another type of stitch, yes,
swatch all the stitch patterns.
You have to swatch every stitch pattern.
It's one of the reasons I usually just work in one stitch pattern.
Mm-hmm. And no, most of the time, the patterns don't tell you that. They tell you make this one stinking stockinette swatch. And then when, the sizing is weird, you can't figure out why. That's why. So I got that all going. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys what yarn I'm using. This is a really sweet little yarn that I got from discontinuedyarns.com. It's called Lino Hand Dyed, originally from Trendsetter. And the colorway is called number 9 Water Waves. And it is a cotton, 60-something, I'm gonna say 68% cotton, 32% linen, 110.
I like that color.
Me too.
So giving ocean.
Yes, yes. So Cryss is doing, did a tutorial that will be out on Friday, by the way.
I forgot about it. When you said it, I was like, I did a tutorial? Yeah, I did. It's my first tutorial.
Yes. To, give you guys an idea of how to figure out how much yarn you're going to use. So I used the method she talked about in the video to figure out whether or not I had enough yarn. And it turns out I do. I did need that second order. I really, really, really did. So I'm gonna need like 14 skeins of this in order to make my skirt. So I think that tutorial will be out on Friday.
Sometime this week.
Yes, Friday. And take a look and it'll tell you exactly how you can figure out how much yarn you use. So now I know I have enough yarn. I'm pretty clear on how this thing will fit me. And finally today I was ready to start knitting. So I've got her going.
That's another thing that trips me out about knitting. That cord and how everything gets bunched up on the cord, because I feel like I couldn't see what my garment actually looks like with it all.
Oh, you can't?
Oh, it's okay. It's not just my imagination.
No, you can't. I mean, how would you?
How do y'all do that?
You make a mock-up.
This is a leap of faith.
It is. But what I'm going to do is when I have some skirt available, I'll start trying it on right away. That way I can, I can modify it before it gets way too far along. So I cast on, I had a whole heap of stitches to cast on, and I'm casting on them around. And I have never successfully cast on a bunch of stitches and join them in the round on the first try. My stitches just spin right around the cord. So what I normally do, and what I did this time, is I started knitting flat. And then once I had a bit of knitting that was more stable, I straightened it all out and I was able to join in the round on the first try.
That's what I do too.
Yeah.
I do a few rows first.
And what I'll do is when I'm done, I'll just take the starting yarn and match or stitch this together, and no one will be the wiser because you guys won't tell anybody, right? This is just, just us. But that's where I'm at on my skirt. What's going on with you?
I'm still continuing work on my t-shirt. I've made a fair amount of progress.
Mm-hmm.
So, recap, here's the front. It's got that fun little cable pattern on it.
Yes.
And here is the back. The back is actually almost done. So no cabling on the back because I did some math and I realized I was not going to have enough yarn to do cables on the front and back. So now I've learned, do the math before you start, but also do it before you buy the yarn too. I need to move it back one step. But so I just removed the cables, and so this is just all single crochet, which I just think is such a beautiful fabric. If I did not push myself, I would probably use single crochet for
everything, right?
So I've had shoulder shaping on one side, and I just have to do my shoulder shaping over here, and then the green hem, and then I can put my front and my back together. And I did the back a little bit wider than the front. So the back is where all of my armhole shaping is. There's no armhole shaping on the front. Mm-hmm. And so that's really where that extra yarn is on the back. It'll just end up turning around the side and it won't be a problem that my front and my back are just not the same size at all. But I'm still just loving working with this yarn. It's Tin Lena from Skeins Knitting. Mm-hmm. And this feels like it's going really quickly compared to the lace dress.
I wonder why.
I'm just surprised because I'm working with a 3mm hook. And I just thought that would just take a long time. But I guess with lace, you have to skip a certain number of stitches and, you want your holes to be in the right place.
Exactly.
So I guess it just takes more time.
And it's more of a garment. Hello. There's more garment that you're making.
Yes, it's also, a dress.
You're just making way less garment at this time.
But yeah, there's no big news. It's just going well. So that is what I am working on. And also, trying to figure out what I'm going to work on next. Because now that I'm getting close to the end, this is when I start thinking about my next project. And I just, want a general idea. I'm not going to design it and all that stuff. But if I'm making a top, if I'm making a skirt, right now I'm still thinking about shorts. And I have the swatch that I did for a pair of shorts. And I see it every day because it's in my room. And shorts might happen. We'll see. We'll see if I can squeeze out a pair of shorts before the end of summer. Maybe. But yeah, that's really all that's going on with me.
I wanted to ask, because I am a pattern annotator. Mm-hmm. Do you annotate your patterns a lot or exclusively?
Well, I write them myself, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you totally annotate your pattern.
Yeah, my pattern is all annotation.
You're completely annotated. But I find that by the time I'm done making my own notes and making my changes on the pattern, I understand. It was so funny because I was thinking about it last night as I was doing this. But years ago when I first started knitting, I was really knitting a pattern one line at a time. And you remember that scene in Ants when he stepped off the ant path for a minute? He was like, "Oh no, I'm lost." And that's how I was.
The scene, but I know that feeling. Yes.
That's how I was. If I didn't understand the next instruction for the next row, I was stuck. And part of the problem was every row was a surprise because, you know, I was not reading the pattern ahead of time all the way through. Like, oh my God, why would I do that? Why would I do that? But, so I never had a mental map of the thing I was making in my, you know, at least generally, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. I didn't have that in my head at all. So if I got stuck because I didn't understand a particular instruction, the project would come to a screeching halt. It would, because I could, until I found out what whatever it was meant, I couldn't continue. I mean, and sometimes it was sad because sometimes reading to the next line would have solved the problem. But I literally got stopped in my tracks right where I was.
That's when all of your faith is in the pattern.
Yes.
And you're not like bringing your own design sense to it, or, you know, your own experience from having made other things.
Right.
And I've talked about this pattern dependence is not a good thing because it hampers you. It makes it harder. It'll stop you in your tracks. So you don't have to design everything you're making like I am, but you want to have enough understanding of just some basics of construction of the type of garment you're doing. So if it's a raglan, it's in the round or whatever, so that you can anticipate some issues you might come across.
Exactly. And since I'm so heavily modifying a lot of the patterns I use, it has really become a necessity for me to annotate the pattern, explaining to myself the things I need to know. And it's made me take that piece of advice that everybody gives. It makes me read the pattern before I get started so I know what is up. It's like, I mean, sometimes it's a simple
because you are completely customizing your patterns.
Yeah.
Because it's funny because people are always talking about the whole size inclusivity thing, but you don't limit yourself to patterns that might originally be written in your size. If you like it, you make it and you figure out how to make it in your size.
Right.
And Lisa's like the only knitter I know, right? I mean, I've met people since we had the store, but as far as like work process, I tend to assume everyone works like she does until I see people say other things online. Apparently not everyone's doing that because Lisa will just take your pattern and make it her own, make it suit her needs. But that's not only is that not the standard, I feel like that's not the advice that's given.
No.
There's generally a belief that you should be able to put your complete faith in this pattern. But as one person designing from their own perspective for potentially thousands of people they will never have seen. They're not psychic. How on earth could they make a pattern that's perfect for everyone who might pick up the pattern? And it's not just about plus sizes. If you have broad shoulders or longer arms or a bigger bust, I see a lot of people talking about bust adjustment.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Because it's not always proportional.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So everyone who's going to work from someone else's pattern has to be prepared to make some kinds of adjustments. And I know, much like Lisa, I used to think patterns were written in stone.
Yeah, I did.
And that you just absolutely follow them and you never change anything.
And in my heart, I believed what people told me. You have to use the same needles. You have to get gauge.
Right. I thought that was the whole mystery.
That's the
just
secret.
Get gauge and you're good.
And once you got gauge, you know, the angels would sing. You know, the sun would rise and the thing would come out the right size.
That's not a thing.
No, it's not.
And you know what? It's funny because I feel like we don't expect that from clothes we buy in the store. And a lot of people, if you're just talking about shopping, you'll say things like, oh, when I buy stuff from them, their clothes run small, so I always buy a size up.
Right.
Or whatever it is. We know that, you know, these are like cookie cutters that have been, you know, pushed out, and it may not suit you the same way it suits someone else, and we expect that. But here we are with the opportunity to customize a garment to make it exactly for ourselves, and we get mad about having to do that. It's not a punishment, it's an opportunity.
It is.
To make sure this thing you're investing so much time and money in fits you the way you want.
Exactly.
But I also understand that people aren't really being taught how.
That's the truth.
And
because
that's the flip side.
That's the other thing. It's been years of trial and error that
I've
had
that
to,
on your own.
that I've been learning on
customize
my
pattern.
own. Yeah. And for me, it was out of necessity, because when I started knitting, weren't no patterns written in my size. I didn't make garments for years because I didn't know how to make the changes, and weren't no patterns written in my size. So, and that goes for the petite people too. If you are not at least 5'2", 5'3", most things are not going to fit you right. And I am 5'7" and plus size. So I had to fend for myself. And the funny thing is, the first patterns I was able to customize was socks, because I'm also a size 11 shoe. And trust me, ain't no patterns written for size 11s.
So personally, I see the ability to customize, like I said, as an opportunity. And I'm also, I want to learn that, say you have to bring your own knowledge of construction. This is how I'm choosing to learn about construction, by, designing my own patterns. But what Lisa's doing will also help you learn about construction. Just being willing to be flexible and make changes to the pattern that you want or need.
It's like, and sometimes it can be simple. Like sometimes my notes are like super simple. Like there is an eyelet that you're supposed to put in the front center of the skirt, right? But they tell you how to place it by telling you the number of stitches to work across until you get to the eyelet.
You have a different number of stitches.
Not only that, but let's say you didn't think about that eyelet ahead of time, and you didn't place your beginning of round in the center of the back. Because
why wouldn't you place your beginning of round in the center of the back?
Because you can put the beginning round anywhere.
Yeah, but
I typically put my beginning round on either on one side or the other, not the center back. So I made a note to myself, because of the way they counted it out, put the beginning around the center back, so that I could come around to the center.
It's anarchy, Lisa. What are you doing? You just put your beginning around wherever you want.
But they didn't in the pattern. They didn't tell you where to put the beginning around,
because they think you're just going to do whatever they said.
Yeah, but when I'm casting on, I guess if I read the pattern ahead of time, I would know where eyelet was coming and think about it. But that's the only reason I thought about it at all. So it can be little things like that, where you place the beginning of your round, that will still throw your stitch count off. Because if I'm at the center back, yes, 110 stitches will be the center front. But if I'm at the side, which is my instinct is not center back.
Interesting.
So those are the type of notes that you would want to add to your pattern, whether or not you're changing up a whole bunch of stuff, just to tell yourself, oh, well, it has to be placed here in order to make this work out right. Another thing I did was, sometimes I get into a groove when I'm knitting, and my hands take over, and I just keep on doing whatever I was doing because my mind has wandered off somewhere else. So I placed in my pattern a big highlight to tell myself, okay, you're switching to the other stitch pattern now, just to bring my attention back to it, so that I have a better chance of, not having to rip out many rows. But those are the type of things you can add to your pattern, whether or not you're re-gauging it or anything like that. That will help you get the result that you're looking for without having to do a lot of ripping out. Anyway, it just came up because I was like, oh, I want to talk about that.
Because we just had a conversation about what we were going to talk about, and she didn't mention this at all.
Yeah,
this is how her head works. Like, she just, this.
And I didn't like how they did the increases, so I changed that. So I made my own little chart of how the increases are going to go. And that's how they're going to go. Because it's my thing. I can do it my way. That's right.
Well, what we had actually planned to talk about. So I haven't been on Instagram in years, so I'm getting some of my what's going on in Stitch World from Reddit now. And honestly, it was a lot of the drama happening in Stitch World that made me not want to be on Instagram. In addition to, I just don't trust how Zuckerberg does business, but we're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
And so there have been a lot of posts that have come up about people being accused of stealing someone's design. And it's annoying. It really is. And recently, apparently Stephen West was about to put out a shawl pattern, and someone said, oh, another designer has done a similar shawl. So he decided to not release his pattern, and instead he's, directing people to this designer, Olga something, whose shawl is similar. Basically, it comes down to them both having used the same stitch pattern.
Yeah.
Lots of people are going to use the same stitch pattern. And so the post on Reddit actually said that they thought it was very classy of Stephen to not release his pattern. But not everyone can do that. Stephen West, in addition to being a designer, owns a very successful yarn store. So however long it took him to develop this pattern and prepare to market it and, assemble his kits and all of that stuff, he apparently can afford to go ahead and not release the pattern. But if you're talking about a designer who is counting every dollar they get from every pattern, they can't afford to not release a pattern they spent months working on just because someone says it's similar to their design.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that this makes any kind of sense. And the funny thing was that on Reddit, there were several previous posts about other people making accusations of pattern stealing. And the consensus was, well, that design is so simple, it's so basic, you can't claim that someone copied it. So it's just like, what exactly do you expect designers to do? Are you supposed to be the bigger person and not say anything? Or are you supposed to expect the other person to pull their design? There isn't even a consensus about what the etiquette is when two designs are similar. And I honestly think this is an area in which the yarn world, yarnies, let's call them, need to grow up a little bit. Because there will just have to be similar things in the marketplace. It's called competition.
Exactly. We don't get mad at one person for selling a t-shirt when another one sells a t-shirt. And just about every t-shirt has the same basic shape to it.
It's shaped like a T.
It's shaped like a T. Okay, you can give it a V-neck, you can give it a round neck, you can give it a boat neck, but it's still a t-shirt. And I think that since there's room in the world for millions of t-shirt designs, so I think there should be room in the world for many, many simple. And then that's the other thing. People get upset when a designer puts out a basic. But in life, a lot of us reach for our basics all the time. Those are the things that get worn the most.
I have owned this t-shirt for 20 years.
This one, I've owned it for many years too. And I wear it all the time.
My t-shirt's old enough to vote. Just so we're clear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about it, dang. But I don't know. I think it's kind of silly. Unless the only time I've seen it where it sort of made sense was when someone literally lifted the written instructions from one pattern to the next.
The written instructions have a copyright to them. You wrote them and you own that arrangement of words. But the design, whether you have a V-neck or a crew neck or short sleeves or long sleeves or what have you, or a particular color work design, it's literally not copyrightable. It's not something you can own. It's funny, I remember years and years and years ago when Oprah Winfrey was still on, she hosted this guy who what he did was knock off designer outfits. And so she had him on right after the Oscars. And it was the next day,
I remember
he
that.
had knockoffs of dresses that several celebrities had worn on the red carpet. And I remember because he did this dress that Julia Roberts had done. It was that black slim dress that had like just like the white stripes going up the front, and it was like a kind of a halter design.
Yeah.
I thought that dress was cute, and his version was dead ringer. He can do that. However you feel about him doing it, there was no reason he wasn't allowed to be on television selling the versions that he himself had sewn or had his staff sew.
Yeah.
The fact is, you cannot copyright those design elements. So this idea that, you know, the designer actually owns that just doesn't make any sense. You don't own a stitch pattern. You don't own the shape of a garment. Other people can make similar things. And the fact is, we all just need to be okay with similar things being on the market.
Yeah.
And it's fine. That's the whole idea behind trends, that people put out things that are similar because people seem to like that feature of it. It's not a thing. And again, people have this weird idea about what designers are, and they're just not these exalted beings who receive divine inspiration. They're working and they're figuring things out, and when they get something they like, they put it out. But they're all doing that. And sometimes some things will be similar because a sweater is a sweater is a sweater.
And sometimes there's just a trend that the designers are picking up on, and they do their iteration of the trend. So yeah, you will see several sweaters in a color. Like sometimes it's a color theme that runs through, and everybody's making that golden yellow sweater or the blue sweater or what have you. People pick up on that, and yeah, you're going to see some similarities in design. Pick the one that you like best and make that one. But it doesn't have to be a battle to the death about who copied who.
And that was another thing I noticed, that a lot of people were saying they had no belief that Stephen West had actually copied this designer. And I don't knit, but I have watched some of Stephen West's videos, especially during like his the mystery knit along he does every year. And the fact is, when he learns a new stitch pattern or a technique, he gets excited about it and he throws it into a design. Chances are he came across that stitch pattern. He's like, oh, I love this. I'm going to do a shawl. I believe Olga's version is crescent and his was triangle. But most people don't think he actually took the design from her, but still thought it was a good idea for him to not release his. So now if you don't believe he actually copied anyone, but still he's not supposed to put his on the market, I don't understand that.
And the fact is, if you prefer triangle shawls, you'd buy Stephen West. If you prefer crescent shawls, you'd buy the other person. And
I feel like that's the resolution.
And that would be awesome to have choices
in the marketplace, and you can choose.
And you don't have to figure out how to shape that particular stitch pattern on your own if you don't want to.
Someone mentioned that they thought social media was playing a role in this. And I agree very much. Now that we're all so much more visible, you know, you have to like mind your P's and Q's more, even just the appearance of impropriety or what have you. But also, I just think people aren't handling being this visible all the time very well.
Yeah.
I don't think we were meant to live in like the digital panopticon. And it is literally affecting the way people think. It's affecting people's opinions. It's affecting people's expectations. And I don't know how that changes, because it's the norm now. But personally, I don't think Stephen West should have been expected to take his pattern off the market. We all have to be okay with the idea that, you know, a stockinette sweater or whatever it is, it might look similar to another stockinette sweater, because they're both stockinette sweaters.
And that's okay. Okay.
I don't know what you all think. Do let us know. Super curious.
Oh, I do have one thing I just thought of.
You always have one thing you just thought of, Lisa.
I did.
What is this?
TL Yarn Craft has a line of yarn coming out called Happy Place.
Who is she doing it with? Is it
Hobie.
Hobie? Okay.
Hobie Yarn. She's doing it in partnership with Hobie Yarns. Be on the lookout for that. I am so excited to try some because I have been curious about 50-50 wool and cotton yarns for a long time. I'm definitely getting some of that as soon as it's available. It's not out yet, but keep an eye out, okay? Anyway, that's all I've got.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. I hope, are we done?
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for joining us. I hope you guys had a good time. I sure did. See you again next week, okay?
Stay stitching.